Hello, and welcome to another segment of Smoke Signals. I'm your host for today's show, Lieutenant Chris Taylor from the LaGrange Fire Department. We have a great show lineup today. We have a special guest coming in from the State Fire Marshal's office, and you do not want to miss this important message. So sit back, relax, because you're about to watch Smoke Signals. Welcome back. Today we have with us Ms. Carla Richter from the Georgia Fire Marshal's office, and it's a pleasure to have you back on the show again.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you having us back.
And it's always a pleasure to talk with you. We've been knowing each other for several years now, and
Yes.
but it's good to have you here in LaGrange to talk to our viewing audience about some very important topics that we'll have to discuss with them today. But before we do that, if you could, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your roles and responsibilities are.
Actually, I work in the Public Safety Education Division of the State Fire Marshal's office, and what we do is we help jurisdictions all over the state with fire safety education. We handle a lot of different programs throughout the state. One is the smoke alarm program. We handle making sure that fire departments in the state can get some low-cost smoke alarms for their jurisdictions. We handle a lot of training opportunities for our office and for educators and fire inspectors all over the state, because one of the things a lot of people don't realize is once you become a fire inspector, a firefighter, a fire and life safety educator, EMT or paramedic, you have to do annual training.
Exactly.
So our office actually provides training for fire inspectors, fire investigators, and fire educators. So we do that annually. It's in the summertime, and we allow them to do different classes so that they can get their training hours and also look at new and innovative ways to educate their communities.
Okay.
So that's our big one. Another one that we do is we just had it on Tuesday was the state's Firefighter Recognition Day at the Capitol.
Right.
That's a big deal. It's, Governor Deal actually, it's the first Tuesday of every February is Firefighter Recognition Day. So we have a proclamation and we go down and all the firefighters get recognized and we have some different awards. But it's a big deal because we want everybody to know how important public safety is to us and how important our fire service is. So we do that. We have a breakfast, and then the huge thing is that we recognize all of those fire departments through the Burn Foundation, and they get recognized for the Fill the Boot, because everybody sees the boots out all throughout the summertime. Some fire departments collect in May, some collect year round, and that helps with burn survivors. And the Burn Foundation is one of our partners, and they're amazing. We couldn't do the work that we do without them, because a lot of times the money that they get back from the boot drive actually supports their education programs in some of the jurisdictions in the state. And what they do is a portion of the proceeds from the Fill the Boot actually goes back to the fire departments in materials, items, things like that. A lot of departments buy smoke alarms with that because so that they can fulfill that obligation in their jurisdiction, which is great. So we partner with them to help any way that we can. And if you've never been to boot camp, to the burn camp in the summertime, if you, as a fire department, you need to go. It's the most amazing thing in the world, and it just shows you what an impact we as the fire service makes on them. So I love partnering with them, and I've been a partner with them for several years because I've been in the fire service almost 13 years, but I started back almost 26 years ago on an ambulance. So I've been doing this off and on for about 26 years. So, we do a little bit of all, but predominantly now my job is to help anybody in the state that needs fire safety education. Another thing we do, of course, everybody remembers our Fire Safety Tips Calendar. Annually, we have a Fire Prevention Week contest, and actually it comes out, and we started at the beginning of the school year. It comes out in August to all the jurisdictions all over the state. Anybody from kindergarten through 12th grade is eligible to be a part of it, and we have an essay contest and a poster contest. And the poster contest winners actually get to be in our calendar. This is the new one. It just came out the 1st of January, and every month is a different fire safety tip.
Right.
These calendars are provided to every 3rd grade class in the state of Georgia. So they have a class, and we do an awards luncheon during Prevention Month, which is October, and every year the National Fire Protection Association actually has a theme that they put on throughout the United States, and it talks about a different fire safety message. So we partner with them and we utilize that as ours. This year it was, remember, working smoke alarms save lives, because we all know that without working smoke alarms, we're not going to be able to do that. So we reward the children with a luncheon. We do that, and we give them some goodies and everything, and it's great because, you know, we have all those things. And this year we did something a little different, and I know it's difficult to see on the back, but our 2 arson canines were able to be at the lunch this year. So Ava and Carly were there. We have 2 canines strategically placed to help with arson investigations, and Ava and Carly got to come and have lunch with the kids.
Cool.
So, you know, they thought that the kids loved that. You know, they always love that opportunity, and, you know, so we had a really good time. But it's very important, and these essays that these kids write are amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing
Yeah, sure
to
are.
me, some of the things that they come up with, because they really focus and they pay attention, and it's wonderful. So, you know, of course they get to see their artwork all over the state, which is very nice. So that makes it a huge deal.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate. A couple of years ago, we had one of our local 3rd graders who was recognized in the calendar contest. So it's great to know that we have some of our kids here in the LaGrange area who the schools are participating in this wonderful adventure for them, because that is a great recognition for, and especially to be a 3rd grader to be recognized throughout the state. You know, that's a huge accomplishment.
It is, and the first place winners, they actually get a $50 gift card from the Fire Sprinkler Association, and then they get the lunch, and then they, of course, like I said, they get a goodie bag. But one of the nice things is it just promotes that fire safety message that we don't always get to.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, and we love it because we get hundreds upon hundreds of entries. So we have a team of people that come to our office in September, and we all, you know, we judge, and it's hard.
Yes.
It is so difficult to judge these, because some of these children are such great artists and they do such a good job. It's hard to pick which one you want for the calendar, but it's nice, but it's great because they promote, you know, it promotes that fire safety message for them.
Good. All right, so a lot of great things.
Yes,
so
we're
far
busy,
as far
busy.
the state fire marshal's office,
Yes.
and it's just a, you know, an ongoing process.
It is.
Now let's talk about 2014, because we want to go back and kind of reflect on 2014 as we're in a new year now, 2015. Can you talk about the fire-related deaths and injuries in
Sure.
2014 here in the state of Georgia?
In 2014, we actually had 116 fire fatalities in the state of Georgia, which is a huge amount. One fire death is too many, in my opinion, in education. But we actually were down. But the #1 cause of fire fatalities in the state is still cooking fires. It's unattended cooking, which we all know that's very, very important. The second highest cause was space heaters. So we always talk about that, and of course now we're here, it's February, so it's a little chilly, and a lot of people are on a fixed income, so unfortunately they can't always heat their house as well as they'd like, so they utilize space heaters, and some even use their stoves to help heat their houses. So we always remind them that if they're going to utilize their stove or their oven, we always want to make sure that we stay extra safe and do that. So that's what we see, and those deaths are reported throughout the state, and then we report those to the National Fire Protection Association and the USFA, which is the United States Fire Administration, so that we can keep statistics, so that we can gauge those around the country to see what the trends are and see what educational programs and promotions we can do to help better, you know, that.
Yeah, and when we talk about fatalities and injuries, and like you said, what the contributing factor, the #1 contributing factor was, but then we got to look at our target audience too, because our target audience are small children and senior adults, and you kind of talk about that a little bit as far as trends and the reasoning for that being our target audience.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we see, and those of you that are, you know, adults and you work in a public profession, you all know that your business requires you to do fire drills. Your business requires for you to be fire safe. Our elementary school age children, they have to do a fire drill once a month. It's mandated to be reported to our office. So every public and private school in the state of Georgia does fire drills monthly. All the kids know about that. A lot of times, because they're required, but they don't always understand, but young children in pre-K, preschool, daycare facilities, and older adults in our assisted living, our senior retirement communities, and our personal care homes, they don't always know that, and they don't understand. And you think about our older adults and our younger children, those are what we call a high-risk occupancy. So those are the ones that we focus on at the state level, because they're the ones that we see issues happening with, because sometimes in those situations they need assistance to get out. They're not always able to self-evacuate, so they need assistance. So we take, we focus on that a lot, and that's our primary audience, because if we have to focus on target audiences, those are the ones that are at more of a risk. Because they don't always remember, and because we've got to educate them. I always tell the kids, they don't know unless we tell them what to do. And older adults, they remember, but they may not be able to physically evacuate without some assistance. So that's why we have to reinforce those, because those are, our young and our old, they're the ones that we focus on. So that's a big deal for us, and that's what we see. And it's just some basic fire safety tips that they need to focus on, and remind their caregivers that they actually need to be more diligent in making sure that they keep their areas safe, so that they can in fact keep their occupants safe.
And when you talk about caregivers, especially in our senior adult communities, because a lot of times they have someone that is there that provides care for them, maybe 24 hours a day or so many hours a day, and those individuals, especially in personal homes, need to understand, what the limitations are in the event that there is a fire emergency inside of the home, and knowing how to, properly get those individuals out, because I know some of those individuals may be bedridden or on, oxygen and things of that nature. So those things that those individuals need to be aware of are very important. Because if a fire happens, you don't really have a whole lot of time to react.
You don't, and it's so funny because, and one of the things that we talk about, the most important thing, and if you can take nothing away from our messages that anybody in the fire service says, there's two things you need to remember. You've got to have a plan, and you've got to have working smoke alarms, whether it be a suppression system or even at home, just a smoke alarm. And because you think about it now, we're seeing a lot of situations where families can't afford to put their elderly family members into a personal care home, so they're bringing them home. So that takes on a whole new challenge, and for me that hit home personally, because one of the things that happened was my father-in-law ended up staying with us, and he had dementia, and he was becoming less mobile. So we had to refocus and rethink how we did our evacuation plan just at home. So imagine if you have several people in a facility, you've got to think about those things, and we've got to talk about one of those things and what we need to do. And I always tell them, don't overthink it and don't get overwhelmed and frightened, because it's those basic steps that you can do. And if you're not sure where to start, you can contact our office or your local jurisdiction, because depending on the area you live in, we may be the authority having jurisdiction, or your local fire department may be the ones that actually are handling your fire inspections or helping you with that. But our office is always there, because you know what, that's what we are. We are the prevention division, and we want to prevent those incidents from happening.
And one of the things, because I might get questioned this sometimes when we're out doing education programs and things, because the general public, they have questions. But the thing is, they got to understand that the information we give them is the minimum of what you are needing and need to know and need to do, because we don't know everyone's living situations, but they do. But as long as we can give them the minimum amount of information that they need, then they have to go back and try to figure out how to put the pieces together based on their living situations, whether they're in a multi-story home, or if they have someone that has mobility issues, or whatever it may be, they need to take into account for that. And not only the people that's living there, but the people who are visiting there and may not be there on a regular basis. You may have grandkids or nieces or nephews that might be staying over for the night or something. They also need to know what your plans are, so if something happens, everybody has an opportunity to get out of that environment as quickly as possible.
You hit on a very good thing, because I don't, I go do programs all the time, and they'll say, well, what if this? And I get the what if questions all the time, and you do too, I know, from your community. And it's just because you've piqued their interest, and you've also made them think, which is great. You're challenging them to go home and make a positive behavior change. But I don't even know what your living situation is, so I can't tell you. But like you said, we can give you the minimum standards and the minimum things to do, but we expect you to go home, and we expect you to tailor our general information to your specific living environment and your living situation. Now, of course, because we do have codes that we've adopted in the state of Georgia that we do follow, there are certain things that are required of people, but depending on the type of facility or the type of occupancy they have, it may be a little bit different. So that's why we have to be very cautious, and you know this as well as I do. You can't say, well, in every situation you have to do this, but we give them those guidelines, and then we can help them tailor it a little bit better to their specific needs on a case-by-case basis. And that's one of those things, and you and the fire service know that sometimes you may go out to a facility to do training, and they'll ask you questions, and you can tailor that specific program to that audience. But in general, we don't always know that, because for us, the state has 159 counties. There's 617 registered fire departments in the state of Georgia. So that's a lot for me to deal with.
Exactly.
So we do the best that we can with what we have.
All right. Well, we hit some very, very important topics so far, and we got several more topics that we need to discuss that's very important. So at this time, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have more here on Smoke Signals. Welcome back. We've been talking with Ms. Carla Richter from the State Fire Marshal's Office. And Carla, some other things that we wanted to bring up in this segment concerning any state laws and any updates concerning the Education Division. So if you have anything that viewing audience need to be aware of, or anything new that's taking place here in 2015.
Sure. Well, actually, in January of 2014, they updated one of the code requirements for what we used to call daycare provider, which is actually, and it encompasses, and it's actually in 120-3-3, which is a code reference, and it's in the life safety code and all of that. But it's actually 406.2.1, and it talks about caregiver training, which is a little bit different than what it used to be. A lot of you that are daycare employees, you may have known that you had to do child care fire safety training, which is a five-hour class that you take initially, and then every 3 years you recertify that for a 2-hour course. And I know you're one of the instructors there in the state. Well, they've incorporated older adult facilities too, and I'll read it to you just because it's something that I don't always remember. It's called a minimum of 5 hours initial fire safety training for all staff members of daycare facilities, and for administrators, directors, operators, and all staff of Group I-1 and R4 assisted living communities, assisted living facilities, community living arrangements, memory care units, personal care homes, and residential boarding care homes, as defined in Chapter 2 of this code or of the Life Safety Code, which is the 2012 edition. And so it's added a couple of types of facilities in there that we haven't normally done. We've been teaching daycare fire safety training at the state for many, many years. But we've since in January of 2014, January 30th to be exact, they incorporated this. They wanted to add it in because what we're seeing is we're seeing an increase in some fires in some assisted livings, personal care homes, but also because older adults and children are high-risk audiences, we wanted to incorporate that into it. So with that being said, we've been getting a lot of calls at the state, and I'm sure you have in your jurisdiction too, is the fact that, oh no, my assisted living facility personnel need to be taking this training. They do. It's okay. We have a curriculum. We have a training for it. And basically what it is it's to focus on fire safety and those types of facilities, occupancies, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But the thing is because, like we talked about before, it's a little bit different. We handle things differently because we look at folks that maybe have memory issues.
Right.
They may have mobility issues. They may have oxygen. They may not be able to get out without assistance. So we target those types of facilities with some specific fire safety messages so that we can help them with that.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that they can get out safely, because our job is to make sure that we prevent those issues from happening. We know that fires are going to happen, but if we can minimize the damage and minimize the risks to our audiences, then we've done our job. So that's really important. So there's 7 modules in the class, and it's very good. It just goes over some basic fire safety tips, talking about how to put together an evacuation plan, what to do, how to know the types of things to look for in your facility to keep them safe, what things to look for in those high-risk audiences, some things to think about. Okay, well, I have a patient that isn't mobility impaired, but they have a little bit of dementia, so they don't always remember. So one of the things that we've got to do is make sure that we know how to handle those kind of situations, because we know that fires usually happen from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. That tends to be our target with that, so we've got to take those things into consideration. How to put together that plan, practicing it, practicing fire drills, making sure that we look at those things and look at issues, walking through, doing a self-inspection of our facility to make sure that we don't have fire hazards, make sure that our doors are not blocked, make sure that we have good, what we call paths of egress or exit paths. Make sure that our exit signs are working, make sure that we have the appropriate types of suppression systems if necessary. Working smoke alarms, working smoke detectors for those types of facilities. If it's sprinkled, is it working properly? Has it been checked annually? Making sure that we have enough fire extinguishers for the amount of people and the amount of square footage that we have. So there's a lot of different things that this encompasses, and this particular training targets all of those things so that they'll understand what to do if there's an emergency. We're not just going to throw them out there and say, here, have your facility and go with it, but we want to make sure that they're trained. And we have instructors all over the state, so if anybody needs to find out an instructor, they can either call their local jurisdiction or they can call our office, and we can get them in touch with the appropriate people.
Okay. And if you can give the number for your office.
Actually, they can go online and look at information, but actually you can call us at 404-657-0831, and that's the Public Education Division of the State Fire Marshal's Office. And that comes directly to our section, and all of us can help answer those questions.
Okay. So you made a great point there by taking the new updated code standard and then applying it to a more broader audience versus just a daycare facility, which I'm very familiar with, but to incorporate the healthcare facilities and personal care. And people have to understand, this is something that y'all just didn't just put together.
No.
We're going by statistics and showing where we're having issues at where it comes to fire-related injuries and deaths. And so now that is a focus point, and the education need is in those areas. And so we want to make sure that people understand that this is something that is for their benefit.
Absolutely.
Because the last thing anybody wants to have happen is a fire on their watch, and they don't have all the education and all the things that they need to have in place when it happens, and so they're ultimately responsible.
Just like if you have children, you want to make sure that your daycare facility is safe. You want to make sure that they incorporate all of those safety messages and safety procedures. It's just like I always tell people: you get in the car, you automatically put your seatbelt on. You know what you're supposed to do, but we become, in our community, we become very fire safety complacent because we don't think it's going to happen to us. And the only time we think about fire safety is really when an incident happens, like you said, on the media or on the news, or you hear something in your neighborhood. And actually statistics show that everybody's going to be affected by a fire in one way or another in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's just our job to make sure they're safe. And I know that as our parents age, we're the baby boomer population's getting into that older adult phase now. We want to make sure that our family members are safe, our friends. We wouldn't want to put them in a place that wasn't safe. So our job is to make sure that we can keep it as safe as we can.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, we're about to wrap everything up because we have talked about a lot of great information today. And but I think the caregiver program is one of the more important topics that we need to discuss because it's new and people need to be aware of it.
Absolutely.
So as we get ready to close, are there any safety tips for our viewing audience as we wrap up? Because we're still in the winter season.
Yes, there's winter fire safety. There's always winter fire safety. Always make sure that you keep that 3-foot rule around any space heaters. Make sure that they're listed through the underwriter's laboratory. The tag should show that because they have automatic shutoffs, things like that. Just keep that 3-foot space. I always say keep that 3-foot rule, just like when you're in the kitchen with your children. 3-foot rule around the stove. Make sure that if you're cooking, you make sure that you wear no loose fitting clothing, robes, things like that. Don't leave cooking unattended. If you have to leave the room, take something with you to remind you, or set a timer. That way you'll hear the timer go off. Things like that, just those really important. Make sure that you test those smoke alarms monthly, but we all know that some things have changed with smoke alarms. Some of them are now 10-year lithium batteries, so they actually don't need to be changed. We just need to test them, and the batteries are with the life of the smoke alarm. And actually, smoke alarms expire. They have a 10-year shelf life. So check those smoke alarms. If they're hardwired into your home, just test them, make sure that you have them looked at by a licensed electrician, or check the manufacturer's instructions and follow the directions on the manufacturers. If you don't have working smoke alarms, please contact our office. We will make sure that you get them. If not, we'll get them to your local jurisdiction because that is so important. You got to have a plan and you got to have working smoke alarms. Those are my 2 messages that I always tell people. Okay,
well that's great, and we want to thank you for sharing those safety tips for our viewing audience, and we want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to come down and spend some time with us here on Smoke Signals.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate any time we can talk about fire safety.
All right, and we want to take this time right now to thank you, our viewing audience, for watching another segment of Smoke Signals. So until next time, take care.
This is Bobby McClellan with the City of LaGrange Garage, and I'm here to talk to you about another winter car care tip for your vehicle. One very important thing you need to check is all your vehicle's fluids. There are a few fluids you need to check, which is your engine oil, your transmission fluid, your power steering fluid, your brake fluid, and your washer fluid. These are all very simple things to check, and it's very important to keep them where you need to be in your vehicle. First thing I want to talk to you about is your power steering fluid, which on my vehicle is right here. On your power steering fluid reservoir, there's going to be a maximum and a minimum level, and some of them have a dipstick. It's very important to keep it within the proper levels or you'll have a problem steering. Another thing you need to check is your engine brake fluid, which is here. It also has a maximum and minimum level, usually a see-through glass, very easy to check. You also need to check your oil and your transmission fluid, which both have a dipstick, which on my vehicle are here and here. Easy to check. The engine oil you check with the vehicle off and it cool. The transmission fluid you need to check with the vehicle running and the engine warm. That way the levels are correct. Another thing you need to look for is your windshield washer fluid, which is on my vehicle here. And a good thing you need to put in it would be windshield washer fluid with de-icer. The de-icer helps during winter because it helps to actually clean the windshield off if it gets frosted over during the winter. And also, of course, you need to check your windshield wipers, which I have one here. Windshield wipers are very easy to check. You just need to make sure they do not streak on your windshield and check to make sure the rubber is clean and clear of any debris. This is just another simple car care tip from the City of LaGrange. These are just general care tips for your vehicle. Please refer to your owner's manual for any vehicle specifications.